As the weather outside starts to freeze and gets colder, the transfer portal heats up. I am Mike Asti, going to be joined by Luke Blain here, another edition of Mountaineer Report, made possible by West Virginia Sports Now, available everywhere you get your podcasts and throughout the network. And that's it. That's what you see all over the site right now. A lot of activity, a lot of departures right now. So the transfer portal has not yet fully opened up outside of for lower level ball. And players are already announcing their intentions to enter that portal. And then you'll see as the year turns and the month turns, the activity that West Virginia will try to put forth to add and replace. And now maybe a little bit more activity in that portal in terms of additions might be needed than initially first thought or said by Rich Rod. But we are going to get into all of these portal departures, headlined, of course, by Jahiem White, Dior Hubbard. For the most part, the rest of them are either backups or players that didn't really play at all, players that clearly are looking for more playing time, or maybe were told to depart from the program. Nothing really to freak out about if you're a fan outside of your thoughts on Jahiem White, of course. And then why the upcoming game for the men's basketball team, we actually told you this last show, but why this one is really now a must-win game. This is the last opportunity for the men's team to really swing for the fences and get a quality victory under their belt, whatever you think of it, a quality victory under their belt before the turn of the year and getting into Big 12 play. They will have plenty of opportunities for those in Big 12 play, but requiring to stack those in Big 12 play is going to be probably a recipe for disaster. Again, Mike Asti, Luke Blain here, Mountaineer Report. Luke, before we get into the men's opportunity coming up this weekend against Ohio State, you're going to be there in Cleveland covering for us at WVSN. Let's talk some football transfer portal activity. I don't know, just I guess simply put, where are you on the surprise meter of the amount of players that are leaving this program after a really solid recruiting season, high school recruiting season, high ranks nationally, clearly more money has been spent than in recent years, and yet they're still seeing kind of an exodus, even though not really any players to freak out about, except, of course, Jahiem White does leave after hinting at staying for months. Where are you on the surprise meter, especially with Jahiem? Did you see this coming at all? There are some Mountaineer fans that almost seem totally bamboozled. I even saw some tweets days prior to his announcement. Well, nothing matters as long as we keep Jahiem. You're not keeping Jahiem.
No, they are not. And I would say that is probably the more surprising part about this one. This portal cycle, I
Yeah.
think, is Jahiem, because it really did sound like, I mean, he was training in the facilities. He was talking about, like Mountaineer Nation, things like that.
Yeah.
And then, he leaves. Like I was a bit surprised by that. I mean, very strong offensive weapon, as we know. Like he was making play. He scored that touchdown in the Ohio game, which was the best the offense looked all day, was on that drive. So,
Right.
and then he gets hurt a few drives later, and then he's done. And then you saw what happened there. So,
Yeah.
very talented player. Um, I'm curious to see where he'll go. I know Penn State was high on his radar coming out of high school, but
I was going to
that
say.
staff has now moved to Virginia Tech. So does he want to
Well,
play at Penn State, or does he want to play for that staff, or does he want to go somewhere else? I know some people have told me North Texas.
of course.
I think he'd be crazy to go to North. I don't. Well, I don't want to say he'd be crazy. I just think that his talent level is definitely still Power 4 talent level.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
Neil
I
Brown
think that
gets him. He might be winning that conference pretty quick.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean, that would be a
Like
P4 player to add to your G5 team. That would be a
yeah.
nice addition, of
Neil
course.
Brown in the
Yeah.
CFP next year, man. I mean, that would be that would be something else.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have a betting on situation here of who gets there first between Rich Rod and Neil Brown, it looks like now, based on what we're seeing this year, of course, and we're not going
Yeah.
to make it a C show here with the two G5s getting in. They play easier schedules. They have an easier path, you could argue. If you're an elite G5, I might put money
Yeah.
on Neil Brown in there before Rich Rod. Right now, the path might be
Yeah.
there. But yeah, certainly if it gets Jahiem White, and who knows, depending on the health and if he can ball or not, Nika Markiel, maybe West Virginia South would be down there in Texas, in Denton.
Could be.
And
Yeah,
yeah, Penn
but
certainly one of them too, because I know that he wanted kind of an offer from there. He wanted to go there maybe in his heart. That was what he kind of always wanted. I've heard from people, but it just didn't really look like they really wanted him. And he went where he was really wanted by Neil Brown at the time. And then, yeah, you do make a point there with James Franklin, who didn't really want him then, but maybe he's impressed them enough since then, at least the 2023 season and that Mayo Bowl. I mean, he was the best player of that season, you could argue, when he really emerged. Maybe he impressed them enough, actually a couple years of his career last year, notwithstanding, maybe take him to Tech, which would be probably hurt Mountaineer fans more than Penn State. I mean, there's not really a Penn State rivalry unless you're, 50 plus years old, but Tech fans and West Virginia fans still got some hatred, even if they don't play.
yeah.
That would probably sting more, I'd imagine. But maybe not even any of those three. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, could be. But I mean, everybody else on this list, it doesn't really feel surprising. The only two names that really caught my eye were Khalil Wilkins and Dior Hubbard. And I
Right.
think it became pretty evident throughout the season that Khalil Wilkins was not at the level he needed to be this team's starting quarterback. And, he can go somewhere else and develop and maybe potentially compete for a starting job. So, but Dior Hubbard, I mean, Dior Hubbard was consistently in the mix whenever he wasn't hurt in this running back group. So, I mean, I don't know. Could there be a big time turnover at that position where you see some new names pop up?
Yeah.
Maybe in the transfer portal, somebody. But those are the two. Jahiem White is obviously far and above all the others in terms of surprised, but Dior Hubbard and Khalil Wilkins, yeah, I mean, a little bit expected, but still a bit weird to say out loud, I guess.
Yeah, and Khalil Wilkins felt like that was the inevitable decision he was going to almost have to make. It might even have been a decision that the program kind of said this might be best for you because, as we talked about before, clearly, if you just look at what they're doing already with interest and offers and kind of looking at other quarterbacks, including one I put on the site today, Rich Rod even said this. They're going to bring another quarterback in. Who knows if he's competing, who's really the 1A, if Scotty Fox has the edge or not, depends on who the guy is, really. I think it's at least going to be a situation like Jalen Henderson, and you hope obviously a better result than what he became at West Virginia. But with that said, you're going to have that transfer edition is likely going to be competing because I'm sure, knowing Rich Rod, he's not going to announce anybody until close to next season with Scotty Fox, and not two young QBs. Like, to have Khalil stay there and be below Scotty, or even if he says they're equal, it's two young QBs who are very similar against the veteran transfer. Feels kind of redundant. It feels like he probably would end up being the third guy and not playing. So there's no spring portal now. There's the one window. Maybe if this was last year, you might have seen a scenario where Khalil Wilkins would have stayed through spring ball and then leave, at least to get a power 4 spring camp if he's not going to be a P4 quarterback. But with that not the case and only one window, I thought Khalil would go. Dior Hubbard is a little surprising, maybe even more so than Jahiem White for me. I mean, Jahiem does stand out. He is kind of shocking. It does definitely hit the team. But at first you could get a surprise, but when I thought about it, it's like, okay, I knew that last year that he had to be convinced multiple times. I mean, Steve Slayton told me on a show he had to call him multiple times. I talked to him multiple times. That was before and after Chad Scott left. And of course, Chad Scott, ironically, is still available. So, but without Chad Scott there, he was a Neil Brown recruit. I don't know if he ever really felt comfortable under Rich Rod, even seeing him at practice. I mean, not going to totally uncover what was said, but he was getting yelled at more than ever under the Neil Brown staff, just different stupid things. They run a tighter ship with Rich Rod. They care about whether you have your jersey pulled down or whether it's halfway. They don't want chains on the practice field. Things that Neil Brown did not care about, let's just say. So I don't know if Jahiem was loving that vibe, and then he got hurt, and it does suck to never be able to say you got. I mean, everyone said Jahiem White would be the perfect fit under the Rich Rod offense, and we got a game and a half. We got a game and a half of it. So that does suck to have that what if story exist. But I wasn't fully shocked knowing that he had to be convinced even the year before and then had this injury plagued year. I was only really surprised because, as you mentioned, he kept saying he was going to come back, or at least hinting of it. There was reason to believe he was going to come back, and it wasn't just us. Almost all of media was writing articles 2 months ago that he's hinting at coming back, and then he doesn't. And at least, these players, I'll put the caveat out there. We've seen this in basketball happen more than football, but you enter the portal. They could, I guess, come back if them and the coaching staff decide that's best and they don't get another opportunity that they prefer. You're just entering the portal. It's like you're dating, but you're not actually getting married to anybody. So you could go back to your ex if you don't have a ring on your finger. It's very unlikely, and we're basically assuming these guys are gone for the purpose of this. And many of them did kind of say, hey, thank you, WVU, we're leaving. So Jahiem didn't fully put that out there, but he's basically gone. Dior Hubbard, though, I was more surprised by it. I saw a fan say this. I saw some fan conversation, and to give them credit on this, I actually do think you could argue the Dior Hubbard departure is maybe a bigger deal. If you kind of were assuming that Jahiem maybe could leave, and he didn't really maybe feel comfortable there, and if you're Rich Rod and probably thought, okay, this Dior Hubbard was a Neil Brown recruit too, but Jahiem White was more of a Neil Brown guy. If you kind of know that maybe that's a possibility, Dior Hubbard's younger. He emerged last year. Rich Rod definitely liked him. It wasn't really his fault when he wasn't, doing anything early in his opportunities because the offensive line was so bad. He started to kind of click late, and at one point in his high school recruiting, he was a 4-star that whittled down, but there was talent there. And I think there's reason why the fans are almost more upset, at least a minority are more upset by him leaving, just because you want to see more of what he could do as maybe the guy. I think if Jahiem was gone, there was a chance Dior Hubbard would be the RB1, and then everyone else would whittle below him. But with him gone too, yeah, you're basically retooling the whole room. So it now appears that in the transfer portal, your first order of business is maybe to find a better quarterback if you don't love Scotty Fox, a veteran QB at least to compete with him. And aside from fixing the O-line, D-line, defensive secondary, etc., wide receiver, you now need to build up the running back room and not just one guy. I mean, Luke, we saw they went through 5, 6 running backs last year with all the injuries, and even when they're healthy, they need one or two just off what the Rich Rod offense does. I mean, Slayton and Noah Devon, you need more than one guy. And Owen Smith back in the day. Now they need to basically to be somehow getting 3 to 4 running backs, it seems, in this portal, with at least 2 of them being pretty star-studded. What do you think this means now on the activity that Rich Rod has to get together, especially in January, for the portal? Like, where based on the losses, does this mean he has to do more work maybe than you would have thought initially, or at least he's been saying? I mean, he said anywhere from 6 to 10 guys. I don't think that's enough now.
Yeah, I think that given the context, maybe more than you would like him to. I mean, it did, the running back room all season was probably the room that people felt most comfortable with,
Yeah, going
just in
in.
terms of the depth, because they
Yeah.
had, I mean, and even whenever they did have injuries, a lot of the guys who were able to step up came in and produced. They, obviously they weren't Jahiem Whites, but they came
Sure.
in there. And I mean, Ty Edwards is still a name that, Mountaineer fans are going to remember forever because of his performance in the
Yeah.
backyard
He's
brawl.
still there.
So he's
Yeah.
still there. Sincere Bowers is still there,
Tyler
unless I
Jacklick
missed that.
is on the list though. He's leaving. So you are losing
Yeah,
you are losing 3 running backs out of this list
yeah.
overall. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to have to find a way to make up some of that ground, of course. And I'm not sure that that's something that might have been on their radar heading into this, unless they had inklings of suspicion that
Maybe.
Jahiem White
Yeah.
was leaving. Maybe he alluded to that.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure it probably is frustrating to go from one of your deepest rooms to, all right, now you got to you got to kind of send the house in recruiting for that position now,
Yeah.
particularly because, like you said, of the position of the scheme that Rich Rod runs in terms of, running backs and rotations and high speed offense. So it's
Yeah.
going to be an interesting position to watch because you also have to do quarterback. I think the wide receivers are looking all right at the moment. You probably want to add another weapon or two in there. But the offensive line still needs depth. That still needs taken care of. and not to mention just pieces on the defense that need to be made up for as well. So
Yeah.
they're gonna have their work cut out for them going into this recruiting cycle in the portal.
I do think they have more work to do than I can't say they have more work to do than they thought because, of course, no one 100% knows unless you're them. Now, I'm sure they were banking on some of these guys leaving, and I'm sure some of these guys were told to leave when you get down the list. I mean, this is always the annoyance of covering the transfer portal, Luke. Nationally, people look at the overall number of departures. There were even, articles every year where, West Virginia gets this many players or this school gets this many players to leave. It's an unfair number, whether the team's good or bad, because you don't know, at least certainly nationally. I mean, people maybe, people with sources maybe know, maybe we know a little, but people that are writing those national articles do not often know how many of those players are leaving because they just want to screw over the program, are leaving because they want more playing time, are leaving because they didn't get in. I mean, some of these players that are leaving didn't even get playing time in 2025 that went 4-8. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
I can't imagine Rich Rod's losing sleep if he couldn't. A healthy player, he couldn't get in on the field in 2025. Yeah, we should all I guess we all should have had that up before any announcement, quite frankly. So that makes kind of sense, but you don't also know what players that Rich Rod told, hey, you maybe want to stay here, but we think it's best you leave. There's Khalil Wilkins examples that who knows, maybe if he would have wanted to stay, if he was maybe the Scotty Fox instead of being below him in that pecking order, if he had the end of the season that Fox had, and if he didn't get hurt, maybe he would have been more inclined to stay. You just don't know. So Jahiem is a major hit for sure. You cannot say he's not. I mean, the fans now trying to argue, well, what did he do? He's overrated. I mean, come on. I mean, like everyone loved him when he was playing and healthy. He obviously was the top back the last couple of years, at least with CJ Donaldson. I think he was better, honestly. He got hurt last year. It sucked to not see him more under Rich Rod, and that's a hit for sure. The only other one I would watch, and I've been saying this, I would watch Cam Vaughn just for the fact that obviously he lost a little favor towards the end of the year. I know for sure there are people within the program that don't really love him all that much, at least personality wise. He was a game breaker and really their only playmaking wide receiver last season. But Rich Rod also talked about route running and things he doesn't do well. And yes, he was with him at Jack State, but I even could take some of the comments Rich Rod made without naming his name, maybe as subtle shots at him based on what everything else that I've heard. So I wouldn't be shocked if either he's told or he chooses to leave. And if that's another thing that happens, Luke, I mean, again, then you're on the board. Really, even if he does stay, what you need to do to try to win the Big 12, which is what they want to do. So this is how I have to talk. This is what they want to do. You need absolutely to get a couple running backs that can replace Hubbard and Jahiem White, if not be better than them. You need a game-breaking wide receiver to either pair with Cam Vaughn or to replace him at minimum, but probably need two guys, and you need one that can take the top off the defense. You need to really improve the defense that wasn't good enough at all last year under Zach Alley, certainly the secondary and D-line. Offensive line got to be way better. That already was going to be a focus, but, got to be way better. And you need a veteran quarterback, and I think somebody better than Scotty Fox if you're trying to win the Big 12, but maybe he's your guy, but you need somebody at least to push him. A lot of work for Rich Rod to do. And now, Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, West Virginia Sports Now, talking WVU football transfer portal activity. A lot of departures right now, nothing too worthy of a freak out session, depending on your opinions of Jahiem White, ND, or Hubbard. But they also now looks like need a running back coach. Luke, I mean, how much does that now play into the offseason? And I mean, people are going to bring up, do you promote Noah Devine? I can tell you right now, Steve Slayton, who I talked to, has no interest in coaching and is loving to be basically, man of the house in Houston and watch his kids play and, be a family man down there. So he's not coming. He's not going to be the running back coach. But how much does now needing a running back coach and Larry Porter leaving after 1 year to go back to Auburn shake up the offseason too?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's probably going to be hard to recruit running backs to come into this system if they don't know who they're going to be working with, right? I think that is the main thing is that, you don't know you don't have that promise of some stability at that position
Sure.
unless you promote Noel Devine or, some other assistant into that role. But that's what's going to be more like that just throws another whole wrench into this recruiting cycle, is that
Yeah.
now you got to find somebody to fill that hole as well. And as you mentioned, all the other holes this roster has. This isn't going to be a recruiting session like last year where it's like you just have to get guys in to fill those
Sure.
holes just to say you have guys on the team. This is one of those situations where it's like now you have the building blocks, right? It's year one, and you don't have that grace period like you did pre-transfer portal and NIL. So how are you going to fix it? I mean, this team, like you've said,
Yeah.
they keep talking like they need to be contenders in the Big 12 next season. They need to be in the conversation for the Big 12 championship at the time when WVU was 3 and whatever. It was this is a big year for Rich Rod and this team, and there's a lot of pressure. And now losing the running backs coach just adds that on.
Yeah, and that might not have been too surprising either, because of course Larry Porter's going back to a school that he had been at previously, and he wasn't really like a Rich Rod disciple or WVU disciple. He was one of the weird additions, you could argue, of the coaching staff. He's an accomplished running backs coach, but Zach Alley and Larry Porter were the two big name, big money assistant coaches brought in last year. Zach Alley obviously had the Rich Rod connection, and he's getting paid a lot, but Larry Porter just came over to coach running backs and deal with the Rich Rod offense and try to work on the Rich Rod offense, and he's getting paid decently to replace Chad Scott. They got him late in that cycle too, and kind of stole him from North Carolina after their Mac Brown departure, and didn't really want to stay with Belichick. So he never really maybe was a lifer, but it definitely is an issue now, because it'd be one thing if you were going to keep Jahiem and keep Dior Hubbard, and then you could hire a running backs coach and tell him, hey, you're going to coach these guys, and then we're good to go. But now you need to hire that guy and then tell him, we don't know who you're going to be coaching. So help us try to find some, or find those players and then hire the running. I mean, I guess you could wait on the running back coach. It's not like a head coach. You could hire that guy after, if you want to bring in the players and tell them, hey, I'm selling you on Rich Rod and WVU and play in the Big 12, and then hire a running backs coach later if you're not promoting Noah Devine. I love Noah Devine. I think it's awesome he's there. He's a great guy. He was a great player at the program, a top recruit. But is he ready for that role too? I mean, that's a big difference than what he was doing. He was kind of always tagged around somebody, doing a lot in the weight room. At practice, he always would be next to Larry Porter and ask him, hey, when are we going to do this? Or here's my idea. To be the guy, despite being a great former player, it's a different role. I don't know. I mean, maybe he is ready for it. So that's just the question to ask. Is he ready for that? Is that something they want to do? Would they rather find somebody else? Especially because, Luke, you could mess around a little bit last year, even though they said they wanted to win right away. It was literally year one. Some people called it year zero. Despite Cignetti's success, that's a rarity. You need to bring 80 players in to just fill out the roster to have a team, as you said. I don't think any fan totally, off the wagon from just a bad year one with all those injuries. But when you have a great recruiting class, you're clearly spending a little bit more money. Rich Rod does say you got to be a contender, soon again. Year two, it's a little different. I mean, you certainly can't go 4-8, and you don't have to win the Big 12, but I think you definitely got to make a bowl, if not securely make a bowl with 7 wins or so. It's kind of what we've said. And even to do that, you need to improve this roster as it is. So it's a little different. You can't just kind of be messing around and saying, okay, year one, Noah Devine, do whatever. Year two, you got to make sure people are ready. Like, this is getting into serious business here. I mean, if they're 4-8 again, I've always said this. I don't think Rich Rod's guaranteed to go through this contract if they do not win, just because he's a Hall of Famer within the program. I do not think he is. That may piss off some fans, but he has a 5-year deal. We're going into year two. I don't think he's guaranteed to go through 5 years if they don't start winning some games. And beyond even just getting into a bowl game. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here again, Mountaineer Report on WVSN and everywhere you get your podcasts. So that'll be very, very interesting what happens. And yeah, they need to do a lot of work in the portal, but no departure with the exception of Jahiem and Dior Hubbard is worthy of freaking out. And by the way, I have Nico Markiel on our list based on what I've heard from sources, based on kind of what he was saying to people, based on what everyone really was putting out there months ago. I can't say that he has not fully announced it, so who knows? But I cannot imagine he is back. So he's on there too. But that also certainly was expected. Now to turn the page though, to a program that they're done recruiting and building a roster right now. Their main focus is not next year. Their main focus is winning games right now. And that is Ross Hodge and the men's basketball team. And they are not winning games at enough of a pace. They have a winning record, but they basically don't have any big wins and are losing all the big games outside of the brawl, which, as I've said, it might be a big win for you emotionally if you're a WVU fan, but Pitt is going nowhere. Their metrics are bad, and that is no longer a quality win for West Virginia, so they need some. They have Ohio State coming up, a team that actually lost to Pitt. It's in Cleveland, kind of a road game. Before we fully get into that, I guess what happened against Wake Forest? I mean, what happened recently? I mean, they've had a win as well since last we talked, but the last couple games, I can't imagine any Mountaineer fan is really feeling any better, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think that we saw exactly what I've said that I was kind of wary of whenever I heard that WVU was hiring a defensive-minded coach. And I don't
Yeah.
mean, I'm not bad-mouthing Ross Hodge here, is that if you're, I don't want to say primary, if you put way more weight onto defense than you do offense, which I do understand what he said, where like, it's offense is complicated and you have a lot of new players, and that's why you have to root your identity in defense. I think that's fair. But we are starting to see what happens whenever the offense can't respond to a team like Wake Forest. And even if you play perfect defense, perfect offense beats perfect defense every single time. And we saw that in that game. I mean, Juke Harris, he's going to be playing in the NBA. He's having a stellar season. He's a 6'7" guard who can shoot the three ball. He was making shots whether there were guys on him or not. So Wake Forest, regardless of the perfect defense, is putting up points, and WVU just didn't have enough to hang in there with him unless it was Honor Huff. And Honor Huff shot 17 threes. And I know that's what you brought him here to do. I know that's his bread and butter right there, is shooting the three ball. And that cannot be your only form of offense. And he made some impressive shots. He did, like, literally stood with the ball in the corner, had a guy in his face like this, hand right there, and drilled it. And I mean, it's like, yeah, that's incredible, but there's got to be some other opportunities to make things happen with other players. And obviously Eagle staff had a bad night, and Hodge kind of alluded to that in his past presser after the win over Little Rock, where he said, they start with defense, and he wasn't giving them what they needed on defense. So that resulted in him having his season low in minutes, and he didn't shoot the ball a single time. Turn that around to Little Rock. He and Honor Huff both have 20 plus points, and they have their second highest scoring total of the year. That's what you're expecting out of this team coming into this season. And I just don't know if they've had, I don't want to say the offensive opportunities. I will say I do think that there needs to be some changes to the offensive system. I think there's a distinct lack of movement off the ball. And I think, like, during Wake Forest, a lot of the strategy was to just get Honor Huff the ball as well, which is great. He went on like a 9-0 run by himself. That can work to a degree, but that is whenever you play these other teams who can really make the three ball, whether you guard them or not, who are strong down in the post, it's not gonna work. And that's why WVU hasn't, I don't want to say that's why WVU hasn't been able to have a true quality win yet, because I do think that the offense was doing very well against Clemson, and then it just,
they should have beat Clemson. That should be one.
They should have beaten
it'd be
Clemson.
so different
I mean,
metric wise if they would have beat them.
Oh my, like that was, it's hard for me to state how much of a missed opportunity that was.
Yeah,
Like the last 11 minutes of that game, Clemson is currently number 26 in Ken Palm.
It's
WVU's
catching up to you, man. If they had
Yeah,
that win,
it is.
these games would not be as big of a deal. Not that you want to lose them,
Exactly.
but that would be a really, and Clemson's even proven more since then. That would be quad 2 win at minimum, and maybe more. I mean, that
Yep.
would have been a big deal because of what they're doing
Yeah.
as well. It's the opposite of the Pitt win. Pitt has been awful since you played them.
Yep.
You want the. I mean, people hate this because you don't want to root for rivals, but in college basketball, the way the metrics work now, if you beat a team, you want them to be good after that.
And
Whether it's Little Rock or Wake Forest or Ohio State or whoever. So,
and you got to be rooting for every
Clemson, but
Big
you
12
lose.
team along the way too.
You got to be rooting for all the Big 12 teams. And actually, now the teams that you lose to, you need to root for as well. So actually, it's good that
Yeah.
Clemson's winning. It makes it not
Yeah.
as bad of a loss. But imagine if it was a win. And now you get out of the year with maybe no quality victories, and the only Power 4 win being Pitt, whose metrics are just, and I'm not even trying to poke fun. They're just bad. They're not a good team.
Yeah.
Their fans want Capel fired, and they're kind of in a Neil Brown scenario where they can't pay the buyout. It's not a good vibe for the Pitt Panthers, and that is all you have. You need more. You need more. Pitt is not going to join you on the bubble. You need more.
I mean, and I've never really followed Ken Palm that closely until primarily this year. But I mean, beating number 26 as it stands on a neutral floor, I mean, that would have bumped them up. And you would have to think they're probably a good 15 spots higher than what they would be right now.
Yeah, and they're worse in the net rankings.
Because
West
you're
Virginia's
not
been
even
worse
playing,
off in the net rankings, right?
Yeah, and because you're not even playing Xavier if you beat Clemson. So you have another opportunity against, I'm having a hard time tracking down Georgia. Well, Georgia's 25.
Georgia.
Yeah. 25 and 26. You could have had wins over both of them. And who knows
maybe
what
Georgia
would have
beat
Clemson.
You. But even if Georgia beat you and you had the win over Clemson, it would at least been something. You going 0-2 there was really, really rough. And I get it. There are some people, we always get replies, even though, by the way, those stories always do well, which is why we do them. But people always get replies like, who cares about Ken Palm in December? Who cared about Ken Palm in November? I got to tell you guys something. It is absolutely a really good barometer of what's going on and who's going to make the tournament. And you may not care because football season was still going on, but it is really a big deal. It is impossible. It is really hard to go 80 and get in the tournament. I mean, you got to, I say this all the time, and it is true, and people on his staff even know this. Bob Huggins' last tournament appearance in 2023 was strictly a Ken Palm tournament appearance. Ken Palm took him there. It was all about Ken Palm that year. So it can help you and it can hurt you.
They were asking, they were not Eagle staff, Eric Stevenson about it in the press conference.
Yeah, I remember we talked about it every freaking week.
They were being like, so like every game somebody would ask Stevenson, like, so Stevenson, what are you seeing in the metrics this week?
Part of that I will tell you that Stevenson was just as obsessed with Ken Palm as maybe I am. Like he was all about Ken Palm.
He mentioned that without being I don't even know if anybody brought it up. He was just like, I love Ken Palm.
Well, I think he realized that that's the recipe because that team only won 19 games and got in the tournament.
Yeah.
That resume of that team was arguably worse than last year's DeVries team that did not make the field. So again, Ken Palm is a big deal, and around where they were last year in Ken Palm, getting into that mid 40s, that can get you in the tournament, but still put you on the bubble. It's going to be hard to see anyone jump from mid 70s all the way to 30s where you're really secure. That's kind of what they'd have to do. At least they're not, 80 plus anymore, which is kind of a non-starter. And, not to make it all about Ken Palm or make this fully analytical here. I'm not that much of an analytical guy, but it is a big deal. It is absolutely worth looking at. And their Ken Palm, their net ranking, not good right now. And for anybody who wants to say, why is that? The record's this. None of these wins are being respected nationally at all. And it's not even a West Virginia disrespect thing. I mean, they got screwed last year, but it's not a WVU disrespect thing. How can you argue it? What is the quality win? I mean, it's just Pitt, and Pitt is not that good. Look at their schedule. Pitt has lost multiple mid-major games this year. Like, that is not good. What's Pitt's Ken Palm right now? I haven't even looked at Pitt in a minute.
It's 108. I actually just looked at it, but yeah,
There you go.
yeah, and then to add on to that, I mean, like it's not like and everybody schedules the lower end
Right, you
competition,
got to
like
have
in
those
the
games in there
non-conference,
for sure.
like you got to have those games in there. But
Right.
Coppin State is number 364, and you're about the last game before you go into Big 12 play is Mississippi Valley State, who was number 365 out of 300. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, the record will probably have. I mean, the record will have at least 8 wins, but against, I mean, shoot, that's why they left Notre Dame out of the CFP, is because they're not beating anybody. It's like they're
Right.
beating these low end schools, and you're starting to like that's the way it's always been in men's basketball, and now
Yeah, I mean,
or
it's
men's and women's
similar. Like
basketball,
they're
and
Yeah, they had a big one over USC, was ranked at the time, but then USC came back down to earth and kind of became an average team, which is similar to,
yeah,
you beat Pitt and then Pitt doesn't really do much, so it hurts you. That doesn't become a quality win anymore. And Notre Dame
yeah,
had their losses were quality losses, but you got to have some wins. And that
yeah.
it ended up being for Big 12, that was an issue for BYU even, which is why they weren't in the conversation after losing the Big 12 title game. They had an easier
Yeah,
slate in the Big 12. They didn't really have a big win despite being a solid team. Their losses were both the Texas Tech, but then who the hell did they beat? So that is their issue there. And it's obviously a different committee. It's different. Ken Palm doesn't really exist in college football, although maybe it would make people feel better if you had some BCS or Ken Palm to look at throughout the season. But
that'd be
there's
fun
more of a
too.
barometer. There's more of a barometer that you can look at here in college
Yeah.
basketball. And it's just not in West Virginia's favor right now, unless they start getting some of these victories, which is why this Ohio State game is a must win. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, now talking the desperation a little bit of this men's team, Ross Hodge's group, to get a freaking quality win. With that said, Luke, would you agree that this is a must win game? And what do you foresee happening in this game? What's the recipe to beat Ohio State? I mean, obviously, you want Eagle Staff and Honor Huff and company to click and have multiple players in double digits in scoring and have the defense be strong. But the only games we've seen that happen have been against Little Walk, Coppin State. Eagle Staff really didn't even get going against Pitt. The games against these type of teams, either they don't have enough offense. Honor Huff has to do it on his own. Eagle Staff doesn't take shots, which is still my pet peeve with him. Just chuck shots when you're brought to be the scorer. The defense has really always been good, but the offense has been the problem. And it's against these teams where they don't seem to have enough offensive depth.
Yeah, well, I think one of the keys coming into this game is taking care of the ball. Uh, Ohio State averaging like 11 forced turnovers a game. So that's going to be a big
Yeah.
one. You have to have the offensive opportunities in order to stay in this one. Rebounding, and I'm a big rebounding guy. I believe
Yeah.
in rebounding. Call me old school, whatever. But I am a big believer in rebounding. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, rebounding and turnovers are probably two. I mean, if you win those two categories, you win the game. Like
You would
that is
think.
just
You would think.
well, yeah. But for the most part, there's some
West Virginia
outliers in
lost the
there.
game doing that last year, if you recall. They had one game where they actually did. They
Only
were
West
bad rebounding
Virginia.
most of the year, but they randomly did that once last year. But yeah, no, you're right.
Do you remember what game that is?
Not off the top of my head, but I know it
I
happened. Maybe it was 2
that one's
years ago.
escaping me.
Yeah, maybe it was 2
Yeah.
years ago. But anyway, yeah, no, rebounding 100% is a big deal. Rebounding, and
Yeah.
you would imagine rebounding, and if you win the rebounding and turnover, you should win every single game, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, you are like they have a very quality player who's been there. I think this is year 4 for him at Ohio State. It's either year 3 or 4. Um, yeah, senior Bruce Thornton. He has not played anywhere else. I mean, he's a great player. He's leading the team in scoring this year by a mile. Very quality player. Could be playing in the NBA one day. So, and senior guard, so you might see Jasper Floyd on him, that might mix up some looks, but you got to be able to limit him. But they have 4 players who are scoring double digits. So there is going to be a need for defense on the way. And also, I mean, maybe this is just where the WVU offense is right now, but you have to win fast breaks and you have to win the points off turnover battle. And that's just because, it does remind me of the women's team a little bit, where the half court offense isn't as strong as you would like it to be. Sure, Like as long, but if you can win by doing that, as long as you're not using that too much as a crutch, and I mean, you got to think also after this game, you're going to have one game in the next like 3 weeks
That's true.
for the Christmas break. So I think like this is the time. Do what you need to do to get through this game. Turn them over, win points in the fast break, points off turnovers, things of that nature, and then take some time, solidify the offense, maybe figure out some new things that you want to trot out against Mississippi Valley State on the 22nd, and then have that ready because you're about to step into the number 2 Ken Palm team, Iowa State, to kick
Yeah.
off conference play and to start the new year. And
Yeah.
like that's just
Yeah. You
unbelievable.
want a barometer? There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you're
Yeah.
gonna, I mean, I you
Yeah.
know, it is kind of to the football extent where it's like if you go out there and win every conference game, then Ken Palm doesn't matter or whatever, or like,
Sure.
the non-conference record won't matter. But
Yeah.
the Big 12, if somebody does that in Big 12, they're going to be writing documentaries about them for the next years. They'll get a feature film out there or something like
Yeah.
that. Some
You know you're going
A-list
to lose
actor is going to be
games.
playing Ross Hodge. It'll be so.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get them all. You do need to get some big ones now that you are in the situation you're in, especially if you don't win against Ohio State. So it's just all a matter of,
Yeah.
how desperately do you need to win? Of course, they want to go out there and win every game, but there's some things that they're going to have to key in on against Ohio State, especially now that it's looking like they're going to get their first road environment.
And last year, if you recall, all fans do, we're never going to forget it. They had big wins, not only on a
Yep.
conference play, say against Gonzaga, but also in Big 12 play. Kansas on the road. They had top 10
Yep.
ranked victories, and it didn't even put them in the tournament. Now, granted, they dropped games at the end. You lose that game to Colorado. That was really, really bad. Some think if they would have won that, they would have squeezed in. Who knows what you really believe because they blame Tucker DeVries being out, and he would have been out regardless. But the point is, they had some big wins. You would imagine that if you stack enough big victories in a tough conference and you get, 17, 18 wins, you're top 40 in Ken Palm, you'd get in. Didn't happen last year. So it's not a guarantee, which means there's even more pressure now that you got to get some big victories. You got to improve your Ken Palm. You got to have a certain number of W's when you know you're going to lose some games in Big 12 play. And you might even get upset at times because it's just so brutal out there. And you're going to be playing, so many games in a week once you get through this holiday break. And you start out, that is the very first game for anybody to open up Big 12 play. They're kicking it off. National TV, opening up conference play. Iowa State, West Virginia, on the road. I mean, everyone's going to see that. Anyone with any say-so is going to be watching that one probably. And if you go out there and lose by 30, it's going to be rough. You go out there and win, it maybe changes the tide. You got to at least keep it close, though. The beauty of Ken Palm, which helped the team a couple years ago again during the Stevenson year, is, Luke, I mean, and let's be real. They're going to be obviously the underdog for that game. If they even if they lose by, say, 6 or 4 or something like that, they could probably move up in Ken Palm. That's a game you can move up in Ken Palm even if you don't win. I mean, it's really just you're trying to beat out what's expected. So if you're supposed to lose and supposed to lose big and you keep it close, you might move up in Ken Palm. But if you lose by 30, nothing will matter and you probably move down again. So they need to, and they won't keep it close if they don't start playing better. But this Ohio State game is a big deal to get some quality wins on the board. And they can beat them. I mean, Ohio State did lose to Pitt. Yes, it was in Pittsburgh. They lost off a buzzer beater, but they didn't really play well throughout that game. And we saw what West Virginia did to the Panthers. They're a beatable team, even though it's in Cleveland. And you might have some fans there that drive down there. It's not that far. It's only a couple hours. It's not in Columbus. Maybe it won't be as bad as if it was fully a road game. So it's a winnable game. It's not a game that you can just go ahead and have it be an excuse. Maybe you could chalk it up as kind of a road game and have it be a losable game if you would have beat Wake Forest in West Virginia. I mean, like that was really a home game for you that you punted away. That was maybe more of a winnable game than even Ohio State. And the other problem too, Luke, is, in college basketball, the conferences that are the top two, it's the Big 10 and the Big 12. So it'd be great to beat a Big 10 team, but you're more likely to lose to them maybe, especially on the road. losing to an ACC team where it's kind of top heavy and the depth isn't really there, that hurts the conference even for the Big 12. So losing to Wake Forest isn't even good for the overall collective. Brett Yormark probably rolled his eyes at that loss. Like that was just all kinds of bad. So yeah, they need to find a way to get this win for sure. But separate even from the Ohio State game here, as we kind of wrap it up. I mean, Eagle staff was the focus of Eagle staff has been the focus of Ross Hodge's press conferences a lot this year. And Eagle staff has had a roller coaster ride of a season. Started off real slow, not taking shots, not hitting the broadside of a barn. Ross Hodge really tried to defend him, said he was playing defense. They were winning at the time. Then he starts scoring, had a 20-point game, and then they're not winning those games. The team isn't really winning. They get exposed to the team. And then, as you mentioned, he loses minutes because he wasn't shooting, but he also then wasn't playing well defensively. As someone who's covered this team every game here and been talking to him, how do you gauge the real thoughts to try to get in his mind of how Eagle staff is playing for Ross Hodge? Like, do you think at all maybe he's getting in the doghouse if he's not getting it done, not scoring, and then he's not always bringing it defensively? If he's losing minutes, can you read into that at all? And then separate from that, do you think we're close, if it does not work out against Ohio State especially, to seeing a real change to the starting lineup? Ross Hodge alluded to it in the summer that he's not against changing lineups mid-season. If this continues, I'm not saying you make Eagle staff a bench player, but do you tweak this lineup at all? Is there pressure to start doing that going into Big 12 play if this exact recipe continues and in Cleveland, it's still the same old story?
Yeah, well, that is a tough one because I never like to speculate as to what somebody might be thinking.
Yeah,
I think
I know.
that I feel like in the Wake Forest game, I really do think that that benching kind of came on the defensive side. That is what, Ross Hodge
Sure.
said, talked about effort and defense in that one. And,
Yeah.
he said he was like, Trayson knows why he he wasn't getting the minutes he would have liked to in that one. But you turn around, he plays 24 in the next one. And,
Yeah.
he was being aggressive from the floor. He shoots 8 for 14, 5 of 10 from 3. I've said it, that looked like the potential WVU offense that we all expected
Yeah.
coming into this year. The 1-2 punch of Trace and Eaglestaff and Honor Huff, they combined for over 40 points. So
Yeah.
say it doesn't happen, say you have another Wake Forest situation where he plays a particularly low minute count. I think I will say that the only other option I could really imagine to slide into the starting lineup other than Eaglestaff would be Chance Moore, who has been playing very well this season. I've really
Yeah.
liked what I've seen from him. He's
Right.
been rebounding, defending. He adds another uh, dynamic to the offense whenever he's out there and the way he gets downhill. But I don't know. I really do think that because the way that I've thought about this season with Ross Hodge and the way he's been speaking about the team and their progress is it feels like he has just a deep understanding that this is a team full of no returners who's meeting each other for the first time coming into this year, and then
Yeah.
they're trying to
Yeah.
figure it out. And I'm not saying like I'm not taking a side there on that one, but I'm just saying that's where it comes like for me when specifically when he says things like maybe they won't reach their full potential. Sometimes that doesn't, sometimes that happens, which was kind of a shock to hear someone to hear a
Sure.
coach
But
say.
part of the
But
sales pitch of him also was that he only had a couple years as the D1 head coach at North Texas, but being a junior college coach before and having so much success, he was doing the portal life prior to the portal. So he's
yeah,
had these rosters where with no returners most of his career. So you would think actually that was one of the sales pitches of him that if any coach can handle this era, it actually would be him, even if not the major D1 experience for years on end. So for that's
yeah.
hard to use that as an excuse when that was part of maybe what he could do well.
Right. I think also I think he is always ready to defend Eagle staff. I think
Right?
I think I think he hears the noise sometimes. I think Eagle staff's heard the noise. Well, Eagle staff said he heard the noise
Okay.
after this past game. He said he's, like just had to tune out the noise and go in and work, and he put up his best performance of the year this past
Yeah.
week. So I think Hodge sees something in Eagle staff, which feels crazy to say because everybody sees something in Eagle staff, right?
Yeah, I mean,
It's
he was
just
highly recruited.
yeah,
Everyone
yeah.
wanted
I
him,
mean,
right?
it's just
Yeah,
like
right.
like he was initially going to an SEC school.
Yeah,
It's not like we're talking about some 3-star guard that
yeah,
came in and fans are questioning why he's even getting minutes. No, it's Trace and Eagle staff. Like, and I think that
yeah,
that's probably what's frustrating to fans, especially after the early part of the season. Whenever he's still figuring things out on offense, he's not shooting the ball
yeah.
as much. So, and obviously, that is I will say that is a problem. I'm not going to hold back and say that it's not a problem that he's
Yeah,
not
because I mean,
shooting the
we
ball.
talked earlier on in the season on a past show. I think we kind of even threw out the Ohio State barometer of he's going to start needing to figure it out by then, or maybe do you consider a
Yeah.
change? And it was more of like in jest, and it was just randomly throw some. And that was like 2 months ago at the time. But now we're here, and he's still been very
Yeah.
inconsistent. We've seen the peak, but we've also seen the floor. We've seen games where he doesn't take shots. We've seen him score 20 points. I mean, he doesn't have to be what he was last year because he didn't, as Ross Hodge said, it's different when you have other stars or Honor Huff and others who need the ball, where last year was just all him taking 25 shots a game. It's not the life now. But I think it's a little alarming that exactly what Ross Hodge was defending him for early in the season when he wasn't scoring was that he was still bringing it defensively, so get off his butt. Then he ends up kind of getting benched for defensive effort that wasn't there. That's a little concerning. It almost feels like the Eagle staff is getting frustrated, and you mentioned that he's heard the noise by his inconsistency on offense, and it's somehow now trickling into the defensive side of the ball. And if he doesn't bring it defensively against power competition, yes, he did it against Little Rock, but against power competition, and he's not scoring enough, and he's not taking shots, then I think it's very valid to consider removing him from the starting lineup because again, they're desperate to get some wins. They can't, this is not like an exhibition season where you can just kind of figure it out. They're done with that. They could have been figuring it out early in the season and tinker with things, but if they would have had the Clemson win, if they would have beat Wake Forest, you maybe could do a figuring it out and just say, we knew we were going to lose to Iowa State anyway. Let's figure things out. You really don't have room now. There's not much wiggle room. I mean, I'm not trying to be like, extra negative here on December 11th, because I know that, March is very much, in the future, but it's the truth. They got to put out a winning product and a winning lineup and whoever they think is going to help them win right now. And maybe it's not fair to hold the NCAA tournament even on Ross Hodge in year one, but he said he thought they could get there. The fan base is sick of missing the tournament. The pressure was there, and he knew the pressure was there, even though it's his first year, and he's not at fault for Huggins or Eilert or whatever else, or DeVries leaving. So again, it's not going to get any easier when you turn the calendar at all.
I think that is probably one of the more frustrating aspects of this team is because I truly believe there is too much offensive talent on this team for them to not be Big 12 contenders. And that was
Yeah.
always my idea, right? I think that
Yeah.
they have the offensive firepower, and you pair that with a defensive-minded head coach, you have a recipe there for success, but I don't know if the offensive system is setting them up in the best way for that success. And I'm not, I've never been a basketball coach. I've never thrown together an offense.
Neither have
I'm
I.
not gonna I'm not
Right.
gonna sit here and claim to know that everything that this team needs to do, but
Sure.
there's so many times where they go on these 4+ minute scoring droughts. They, if this is still the case, at one point in the season, actually like within the past week or so, they were
Yeah.
averaging a lower points per game than North Texas. So it's that is just, they
And
like
there's more
you're
talent on this team. Yeah, that's
yes,
crazy.
there's way more talent on this team. And I think, you can talk about, figuring out their footing, things like that, figuring out their role. I think the deadline for that to be, and not that I'm like the king of college basketball or whatever, but in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, it's got to be pretty solidified before conference play because, that's still a few weeks out. You only
Yeah.
have 2 games in the next like 4 weeks. You'll
That's what I
have a
mean.
time
There's
to
not
take a break.
much until then, you can practice it, I guess. You can figure
Yeah,
it
you
out
can practice.
during
Yeah,
practice.
like that's what I'm thinking. Practice, get it in there, and then implement it onto the court because
Yeah.
do have a little bit of a break before Mississippi Valley State after this one. That
Yeah.
one's not till the 22nd, which is like just about 2 weeks from now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the I feel like the groundwork is there. There's a potential for there to be a foundation there
Yeah.
that you can
I
build
think
off of going into Big 12 conference play.
Yeah, and I think this roster should at least be a bubble team. We'll see if they get there or not. It does feel like that the team overall and the roster overall is underachieving a little bit, with the exception of Honor Huff and Harlan Obioha. Like, they're getting it done. DJ Thomas getting it done from earlier in the year. Chance Moore is getting it done, but overall, collectively, they're not getting it done enough. They've been squandering some opportunities so far. And the other end of it, I guess, as we kind of wrap things up here, and we'll see what happens against Ohio State, that maybe you're kind of pigeonholed into this lineup, at least with Eagle staff, regardless of what's going on, because as you mentioned, Chance Moore being the other option. Chance Moore has been such a great spark plug type of player his whole career that if
Yeah.
you throw him in the starting lineup when he's not used to doing that and that's not really his game, that could really screw him up. Maybe he wouldn't be as effective with double the minutes. You don't want to lose that. So if you lose Eagle staff and you lose Chance Moore and have him regress, you're then really screwed. That's how you get blown out. So we will see what happens. Eagle staff could easily turn around and score 25 points and wouldn't shock anybody. I mean, he's done that before in his career. It certainly can happen. The minutes he gets, though, will be very interesting to watch. Be very interesting to watch, especially if he starts out slow. Because that is, I think Ross knows this is starting to get in must-win territory. You got to get these big swings. You got to hit some of these big swings, and they can't mess around. So it'll be interesting, the minutes the Eagle staff gets for sure in Cleveland and then moving forward as well. And we will see if they come out a little different starting the new year because, the out-of-conference schedule didn't go as well as it really needed to go to really lock up feeling comfortable about the tournament, even if they get this Ohio State win, but it's definitely critical to say the least. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here. We will have coverage, of course, barring the weather in Cleveland on location there. If not, we'll have coverage nonetheless, even if the weather stops us from attending. But, then we get into Big 12 play and onward and upward from there. But, yeah, if you can ignore the Ken Pom stories if you want, guys, but they matter, and they're going to start mattering more. Because I'm gonna be curious after the Ohio State. So that's we're definitely gonna keep track after the Ohio State game. But that'll do it for this edition of the show. Mountaineer Report again, available thanks to West Virginia Sports Now and available everywhere you get your podcasts. A lot to keep track of on the site with the football activity, the basketball team, the women's team at least got a major victory, their first since Duke. Which when I read that from Griffin, I was like, man, that's in terms of a big time, they won since then, but in terms of a big time.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say, I was like,
no, they won since then. No, they won since then. They actually, if you recall, there was even one where they won by over 40 points, I believe. But
that was it. Yeah, that was Mercyhurst, right?
Mercyhurst, right? Yeah. But that'd be the major win is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
First one since Duke, and they beat Georgia Tech, so they got to stack those as well. But that'll do it again for this edition of the show. Happy holidays. We're now in the holiday season. And yeah, I would say West Virginia is a must-win game this weekend. So tune in. Everyone will be able to check out really how good this team and how much they handle the pressure of a quasi road game and a big one on national TV.